of Dr. Hoppy, you know.
Hoppy.
So, but
Is Dr. Hoppy still alive?
he's still alive.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a doctor of nephropathy.
Oh,
you know,
right.
which is like a similar to chiropractic.
Yes,
you know.
yes, sir.
And so they have the only school of naturopathic medicine in Chicago.
Was that Dr. Sidney? Was he involved?
Dr. Sidney, Dr. Roland Sidney.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of Dr. Hoppy's mentors and teachers.
All right,
and I had
all
a lot of interaction with Dr. Sidney also.
Yes,
you know.
sir. The
Yeah.
famous Dr. Sidney.
Yeah, Dr. Sidney was a genius.
Indeed,
you know.
indeed.
Yeah.
So go ahead, brother. You were saying.
And so all of the different, you know, arts, you know, African arts, cultural arts people were all, everybody was involved with Kemetic yoga. You know, we had Kemetic yoga at IPE and Institute of Positive Education with Hakeem Madhubuti. We would have big things out on the lakefront. Where all the
Chicago, man,
community would
Chicago is
gather.
really a center of that, you
Yeah.
know? And I don't think we fully acknowledge just how pivotal this city was in the development of that cultural nationalism. You know?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people have not, you know, there's not been enough writing on it. I was telling you about the book that one of my other mentors, Jabulani Makalani, Dr. Clovis Sims wrote a book.
Clovis Sims, yes, sir.
That was dealing with the Afro Arts Theater and that phenomenon, you know, that came up on the South Side, you know.
Yes, sir.
Under Phil, you know, brother Phil Karan, you know. And you know, and you mentioned art ensemble, art ensemble of Chicago, AACM. You know, it's just phenomenal. You know, and so many different people. You know, you have so many different artists who have come out of Chicago.
From the hardcore kind of a soul jazz, you know, that you know that people could dance to the expansive, ethereal kind of stuff that Coltrane made famous, but really Sun Ra is the one, the pioneer of that,
right?
And that came right out of the city, right out of the you know, right out of the jazz clubs in the city.
And Earth, Wind and Fire, Earth, Wind and Fire came out of Phil Karan's group called the Pharaohs, who used to perform at the Afro Arts Theater.
Yes,
and
sir.
that little
kalimba,
that was created by Phil Karan. He was the first one to amplify it. He called it a Frankie phone. He named it after his mother, whose name was Frankie. You know, yeah.
Good history.
Yeah,
brother.
he was my teacher. I studied flute with him. I studied metaphysics, and you know, he used to have these classes and stuff.
Which is
restaurants,
jazz and metaphysics. Another combo that's Chicago central.
Yeah, well, if you was into jazz, that what they call avant-garde jazz, the space stuff, you know, you had to be into metaphysics, you know, because you was interested in metaphysics just to get into that type of jazz that was dealing with stuff off of the earth, you know. And so they was dealing with, you know, if you really think about it, they was dealing with metaphysics, quantum physics. They was dealing with a whole bunch of different things that, you know, but in a artistic, creative type of way, you know. But
things that are just coming into focus now in the scientific world.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, man, I think that Chicago is very unique when it comes to that, and I think we need to pay more attention to it. And as you point out, do more scholarship on that period. And you know, you apparently play a pretty big part in that, because you had a place that you called a monastery right above one of the more significant institutions in the city. A black institution.
Well, when I started off practicing yoga, we was on the west side. That's why I got introduced to Kemetic yoga with Dr. Asa Hapi. And so Kemetic yoga was sort of born on the west side. But then Dr. Hapi, he was able to get, you know, our classes transferred over to the South Side Community Arts Center up on the top floor. And so they can hold 30, 40 people. So our classes were always packed. And, you know, so everybody was there, all the different artists, all the different dancers, the musicians, you know, in our community. Everybody came, and just regular people too, you know, came to practice yoga. I would say a large number of people from the South Side, and almost all the artists and intellectuals and stuff came through there at one point in time to take yoga classes with us, you know.
So what was the benefit, man? What did you get from yoga?
Man, you know, the first time I did yoga, I couldn't do anything. The only thing I could do well was lay down on the floor in what we call the mummy pose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they call it the corpse pose or the savasana, right? It's a total relaxation position. But when I did that, I was able to really put my mind into my body, and I could feel that I had a pain in my kidneys. And I had never noticed this pain before, but because I became conscious and aware of my body on a more deeper level, I noticed that I had this pain. And so it dawned on me I didn't like to drink water enough. So I started to increase my water intake, and that pain went away because it started to filter through my kidneys. And I'm Libra. Libras have, if they have any weaknesses, sometimes it's with the kidneys, right?
And now you sound like your own day Olu.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
She knows her stuff.
She knows her stuff.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so, so that's one of the benefits is just becoming aware of your body, and becoming aware of, because even during that time, I would have these headaches, right? I started having headaches when I was a little boy. And I had headaches all the time from the time I was about 6 years old. Almost every single day I had a headache, until I was about into my early 20s,
That's torturous, man.
Yes, it was torturous, and I took a lot of Excedrin and all this stuff, my mother
No wonder your kidneys were screaming.
Yeah. But through the yoga, my headaches went away. Through the yoga and then increasing my water intake, and then learning how to detoxify, learning how to go through a fasting regimen and detox my body. My everything cleansed from my, throughout my entire system from the head all the way down, And so the more I learned over time, the better everything became. My flexibility, my range of motion increased because I was, I'm sort of an intense type of person, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I get into something, I'm into it. So I would practice yoga for 8 to 12 hours every day.
Intense, brother.
And because I was in college, they had a dance studio at UIC. I would go in there, I only took classes like once a week, but I practiced every day on my own. And I would go to that dance studio, and I would sit there for 8 to 12 hours a day. Dang. And I would go in the mirror,
Some
and
would say
I would just practice. Yeah, I would practice because the way I looked at it then was that I wanted to get as good as I could and make as much change in myself as I could on a positive level, because I looked at that as an investment into my future. Just like people save their money for when they retire, I was going to create my state of health so that when I got older, my body wouldn't break down, because I saw my uncles and different relatives when they got into their 40s and 50s. Many of them died before they even got into their 60s, right?
That's right. I understand.
And you see how we used to eat. We would have Thanksgiving and New Year's and all this stuff, and we have a big pig with the apple in its mouth and chitlins and all alcohol and all this stuff, And then you see all your relatives passing away. Grandmother had a stroke.
And we kind of just take it for granted. That's
take it for
just
granted.
The way it is.
Yeah. And I have relatives now who tell me, oh, well, I'm too old to do yoga. I'm in my 40s. I'm too old to do yoga, and this kind of stuff, So,
was the benefit primarily physical therapy, a therapeutic physically, or, because you often hear that the goal of yoga is something beyond the physical. Did you also get those transcendent benefits, those spiritual benefits?
Well, most definitely,
Okay.
So in addition to the physical and the health and wellness benefits, psychologically, it made me stronger. It gave me the ability to focus. It gave me the ability to stay on task, to increase my ability to stay on task, and to stay focused and to achieve my goals, right? Because I could write long period of time, cause I'm a writer, I'm a researcher, I would spend a lot of time in library. So mentally, there's the benefit. Then on the energetic level, you get to understand, you get into the internal realization that your physical body is just one aspect of who you are, that you have a spirit body, you have an energy body. And when you practice kinetic yoga, we are consciously trying to move and circulate the life force through the energy channels of the non-physical body, right? Then on top of that, and our theory is that the physical body is a manifestation of the energetic body. So the physical body is an extension. It's actually created by the energy body, by the etheric body, right? So so when you affect the etheric body, you improve the health and the well-being and the functioning and longevity of the physical body, right? And so you come to that understanding, that realization, and you start to work systematically using techniques within your practices to enhance that.
Are the techniques of Kemetic yoga any different than the techniques of what folks would consider classical Indian or Asian yoga?
Yeah, well, one thing I would say about that is that what people are doing that they call Indian yoga is not even the original Indian yoga. So most of this yoga, most of these styles of yoga is coming from, invented in California. They were invented
this
by
New Age yoga.
Yeah, they were invented by the British who colonized India, and they put gymnastics into the yoga.
Ooh, dig that. Okay.
And so there, and this has been written about by scholars. This is not me just trying to put down that yoga, So
that's very interesting stuff, man.
Yeah.
I had never heard it put in this way before.
And so the original yoga that was practiced in India is very different than what people are doing now. And the original intent of yoga from the ancient times that was created by black people in India, the original people in India was black.
The Dravidians.
The Dravidians. And those people have been oppressed and suppressed, by the
that's Kamala's people.
By the caste system, right? Kamala comes from those people. She don't come from all these people who be complaining about her. She comes from those black.
Exactly, the Dravidian
line, right?
She's a Tamil.
Right, she's a Tamil, right? And I got lots of friends who are Tamils, who practice Kemetic yoga. And Hinduism created a caste system as part of their religious tenet.
Yes.
And part of that caste system was to place people who they call the Dalit in the lowest caste. And for some reason, the Dalit people just happen to be the
darkest.
Yeah. Because they use a concept called Varna. Varna means color. And so they would have a statue of Brahman. His head would be white, and his next part of his body is like yellow or red, and it goes down until his feet are black, and that's showing the different colors of the caste. And each one of those castes have different rights and different privileges.
That's Aryan Hindu influence in India.
That's the Aryan influence. So yoga existed long before Hinduism. Hinduism came about as a consequence of the Aryan invasion.
Yes, sir.
And so the language was a different language. That's why a lot of Dravidian and Dalit people who are part of the lowest caste, they view Hinduism and they view Sanskrit as a language of oppression.
Yeah, oppressive. A lot of Dalit are Buddhists. They converted to Buddhism for that reason.
Right. So and then Buddhism itself evolved as a counter to Hinduism because Buddha, or who was black, he saw the the oppressive aspect of Hinduism, and he created Buddhism, what became known as Buddhism, as a counterbalance to to Hinduism,
to the caste structure, the oppressive structure of Hinduism.
Right.
It perverted the very notion of spirituality that it was trying to propagate.
Right, but the thing about it is that the caste system is a fundamental aspect of Hinduism. you know. And so it's like kind of separate. You cannot separate the caste system. Separating the caste system from Hinduism would be like trying to separate Christ from Christianity.
It's pretty hard to do that. Yes, a lot of people try to do that these days. You know, with this. Well, how does Vedanta fit into that? Which is kind of the essence of the spiritual essence of Hinduism. Right?
Well, you know, Hinduism, you know, when you study it, it does have some spirituality aspects to it that talk about transcendence, that talk about, you know, merging your consciousness with the universal consciousness, becoming one and all those kind of things, because those ideas are not endemic to Hinduism. These ideas are more universal. These ideas are, you know, had a wide presence in the world prior to Hinduism.
Well, what Aldous Huxley calls a perennial philosophy.
Right. So, and also over the centuries, Hinduism had to make certain reforms as people would rise up against a lot of this oppressive stuff, right? And so Hinduism evolved in various ways, incorporating certain philosophies and certain ideas and practices into it, you know, just like America has. We know what America is about, but America talks about integration. They talk a good game, you know, and so does Hinduism, you know. So there's being reform, there's been changes. The caste system is still there, but you see some dark people become rich, just like here, you know. but it's still there, you know. It's still there.
The foundation is still there. But so that the essence of that kind of spiritual transcendent teaching comes from the continent, comes from Africa.
It comes from Africa. In Africa, you know, specifically in Kemet, and I view Kemet or ancient Egypt as being the flowering of African culture and spirituality and civilization, because you had many civilizations and many aspects of civilization all over Africa prior to the rise of Egypt, or Kemet, as it should be called, in the Nile Valley. And so even in the whole area of the what's called the Sahara Desert now, because before it became a desert, before desertification, there was many civilizations there. You know, from East Africa to West Africa, there was rivers flowing from east to west. You know, from the Nile Valley into West Africa, into what's called Nigeria now, Ghana, all those kind of places. There was always a connection between all those places. So what we know now is Egypt is the most visible aspect of Kemetic or of ancient African and traditional classical African civilization. And so
a lot of times people would say, man, why y'all keep talking about Egypt, man? We are vast. We come from Zimbabwe. We come from here and here. Why do you always focus on Egypt? Well, it's like very much like a lot of Western people focus on ancient Greece, Athens or whatnot. They look to that as the classical expression of their civilization. There are many people in Africa who look to Egypt in that very same way. It was that classical expression.
Right. Egypt is, or Kemet is the classical expression of all of Africa. You know, there's a unifying aspect. Even though you have many different cultures, you have different languages in Africa, but you can find certain core values, certain core ideas and concepts that are universal throughout Africa that have influenced all the rest of the world.
Yes,
you know, and so
not to say just genetically.
not
just genetically,
not just genetically, but intellectually, philosophically, scientifically. There would be no Greece, there would be no Rome, there would be no Babylonia, there would be none of these civilizations if it wasn't for ancient Kemet. And see, we don't even understand Africa. We think of Africa as being this modern day bounded continent, right? Africa should be unbound, right? Africa should, you know, when we think of Africa, we should think of the influence of Africa throughout the entire planet. So the entire planet is really Africa, because at some point there was no Europeans, there was only black people all over the planet, and there was only one consciousness that was all over this planet. You know, white people are no more than 6,000 to 8,000 years in existence on the planet. You know, and I'm not saying to say nothing bad about white people, but white people know this because I read this.
I was going to ask you, man. You talking Yakub here? No, I know that.
I'm not even talking about that. But I'm just saying that the white scholars, scientific geneticists,
well, they evolved late.
But they make the statement that white skin, blue eyes is a recent human occurrence.
Yes, sir.
And so these traits did not exist thousands of years ago at the time when African people, when black people were developing all of these concepts and ideas. And, you know, civilization is not just one time. Civilization goes in cycles, right? And so we've had high levels of civilization hundreds of thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. When I go to South Africa, there's a place where there's an observatory in South Africa. They call it Adam's calendar. I can't say the African name for it, but some people speculate at the youngest is 35,000 years old, and at the oldest is 250,000 years old. And this is an observatory like Stonehenge that I've been there. I felt the energy there, right? And, you know, this is a place where
you do a lot of international traveling, don't you, bro?
I travel, you know, after I turned 39, I had the opportunity to travel a lot, you know, so I've traveled all over the place, you know.
Right. Yeah. So you were saying about South Africa?
So I'm just saying you have ruins in South Africa that indicate this was a high-level, sophisticated civilization in the most southern part of Africa, you know, as evidenced by these artifacts called Adam's calendar, which is like a Stonehenge, you know, astrological and astronomical observatory from which you are able to track the movements of the stars and the planets. And so only a high-level civilization is going to have this ability to build structures and to be able to build them in such a way that you can mathematically, you know, track the movements and the cycles of all the different heavenly bodies, you know. And so what I'm saying is that when we look at Kemet, we only looking at the most recent, manifestation of that civilization. And the ones that existed after Kemet were systematically destroyed by white colonizers. And, when you go to God, when you go to the different civilizations that, the different kingdoms we had in West Africa, I think it's like about 15 of them, cities, large cities that were destroyed because when they went there and they saw what these places were, they was like, well, it's blowing our mind. And so they had to destroy this.
Yeah, let's pull a Tulsa on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm that whole thing about we'll get into that when we come back from this break, my brother. We'll be right back.
WIFTBPN. Introducing your trusted source for high-quality black emojis, better known as Blackmoji. We believe black is beautiful, and that beauty should be reflected in the digital market. Now there is an app that does just that, starting with Black Greek letter organizations. Blackmoji D9 offers more than an emoji app. It is a cultural experience of black excellence. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to access a specially curated catalog of emojis representing the Divine Nine. Use the emojis to celebrate Black Greek events, acknowledge current events, support social causes, and learn about esteemed Black Greek members who blaze the trail of Black history. A portion of every subscription goes toward a scholarship fund specifically for members of Black Greek letter organizations to help keep the legacy alive. Download the Blackmoji app today.
What's up, good people? If you didn't tune in to the last I Said What I Said, here's what you missed.
Special thanks to Love McPherson. And when you talk about object sex, you and objectifying that woman, you glorify pieces of her. And let me tell you something. If you think that doesn't matter, it does. And I'm going to tell you why it matters. I looked at a video and I was looking at these young boys, these teenagers, and they were like, do you like black women or white women? I like white women. I like white women. And first I felt some kind of way. Then you know what happened to me? I started listening to them and they said, why did you like the white women? Because they'll do anything for you. Yeah, the white hoes. Bitch, you is a hoe. Oh. Bitch, you is a hoe. And I thought pornography has elevated what the white woman will do for you, the objectifying of her. And this is why we don't realize, even in our spaces, the black man is shut down because he doesn't know the power of his seed like the white man knows the power of his seed. Oh, look, just like milk. He doesn't realize that you sitting up there coming into my neighborhood, objectifying my white women because you say they do it better than your women is a problem. They don't do it to them, but they won't bring that out, and they will not allow you to do that to their women.
I said what I said. Herb 2, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on What's in It for the Black People Media.
WIFTBPM. Live from What's in It for the Black Media Studio.
The problem in the past has been the man turning us against one another.
Take a journey with Salim.
Come with me into Muwakil's world.
We have been unable to see the truth because we have been fighting for 10 square feet of ground.
It's Muwakil's world.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Here's Salim.
And we're back. Salim Muwakil here in Muwakil's world with Brother Yasir Ra-Hotep. Yasir Ra-Hotep. And we were talking, you know, he was giving me a little very interesting history on the development of some of these spiritual systems in other parts of the continent and how many of them kind of merged in Kemet. And, you know, one of the remarkable things about this is that Kemet influenced religious movements both to the east and to the west, because much of Christianity, much of Judaism, that the whole monotheistic idea, much of that came from Kemet, and these other ideas that have been essential to the growth of Hinduism, which, you know, Hinduism is really a pejorative in a lot of ways, because it was what the British named these complex religious systems that were indigenous to that part of the world, the Hindu Valley, whatnot, and they just lumped it all together and called it Hinduism. But it's really more complex than that. But still, the spiritual essence of that came from Kemet, and the spiritual essence of Abrahamic religions also came from Kemet. So that's an amazing reach that this civilization had.
Yeah. Well, you know, see, for me, what defines ancient Kemet and defines African civilization is this concept they call Ma'at.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ma'at also incorporates a cosmology, the story of how the universe and everything came into being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Ma'at states that the nature of the universe is one of order, that there's an order that we can perceive, that is one of balance, that there's a balance that is present in the universe and is present in everything that is a manifestation of the universe, that there is a harmony, that there is present, that that was established there as one of the fundamental constants of the universe: harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these are all the fundamental principles of Ma'at. And so these guiding principles are the foundation of African civilization, and it was especially the foundation of what was established in Kemet. Ma'at is often personified as a woman in a yoga position with wings on her arm, and she's holding the feather of Ma'at on the top of her head. And that feather represents the idea that your consciousness, as expressed by your heart being weighed against a feather when you're being judged, symbolically to enter into the afterlife, that your heart being a reflection of your consciousness, has to be as light as that feather on the scales of justice, right? And so this is where all this stuff comes from, the scales of justice, all this stuff, Judgment Day, all that stuff, St. Peter or whoever it is, Paul Peter, whoever it is, holding, taking the notes down and recording everything. That's done by Tahuti, or Thoth. So this idea of the nature of the universe being one of balance, harmony, justice, reciprocity, so on and so forth, is an African one. But what happened was that with the Europeans, like with the Greeks, for example, their concept of the nature of the universe was chaos, And so in their cosmology, in their creation stories, you have the presence of chaos, even as a God figure. Mm-hmm. And chaos, we know what chaos is. It's disorder. It's the opposite of what we call ma'at. And so when we look at today's civilization, we look at today's political situation, today's warfare, acrimony, and so on and so forth. Why is that there? Because it had its origins in a cosmology, in a conceptualization of the nature of reality and the nature of God that was based upon that everything is supposed to be about conflict, competition, exploitation, survival of the fittest. All of these ideas were the foundation of the civilization. Mm-hmm. And so it fueled slavery, colonization, warfare. The whole idea of total warfare came out of these concepts, right? And so that was the difference between the African and the European in terms of the development of civilization and development of consciousness. So within the African context and within the African yogic context, we are asked, we are driven to maintain ma'at. Mm-hmm. Our task, our value, our ethic tells us that we must behave in a way that is in conformity with ma'at. So we're going to treat each other and others. We're going to treat the environment. We're going to treat nature in a way that is consistent with this idea that there's an order to everything, there's a balance to everything, that there's a reciprocity to everything.
Okay, that leads me to another question. Also, in many Abrahamic expressions of religion, or what some call exoteric religions, there is dogma, and that dogma is there to teach you to act in that way that you're talking about, and perhaps not as poetic as Ma'at puts it, but do unto others as you would have them do all of that. Mm-hmm. There are mm-hmm. dictums that are out there. But people don't generally live up to those dictums. That is the usual case. People they fall down in their ability to maintain that dogma. So, I was thinking that perhaps yoga comes at it in a different way, rather than to enforce a kind of dogmatic view. It raises the consciousness of the practitioner so that they themselves act in that way without any necessity for dogmatic kind of instructions. Am I off on that?
Well, I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Because there is a theory, and the theory is backed up by some evidence that when people start to practice yoga, they become different, mm-hmm. right? That they start to feel different within themselves, and from that feeling of being different, of feeling more balanced within, from being more in tune with oneself, mm-hmm. that there's going to be a change in behavior. And that is true. But during the Vietnam War, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they would practice meditation.
That's absolutely.
And then they would go out and make war and genocidal war against the people of Vietnam.
It's really hard. It's hard for me to imagine them doing that. I mean, they're seriously meditating and then go out and create these acts of violence. You know,
Well,
but they would do it, right?
They would do it, and you know that they had they had programs where they used ESP, you know, to try to develop as a warfare.
They even use LSD to develop ESP,
right? Right, using LSD to you know, for, you know, all this different psychological effects that it could have, using psychic powers, helping people to develop the psychic powers that you gain through your practice of yoga, you know. So even Hitler, you know, and the Nazis, they had a lot of different metaphysical and
very much so
what we would call spirituality
very much
within their, you know, within their thing, and they were the most you know, genocidal maniacs, you know.
That's a very good point, brother. Yes,
you know,
sir.
So so what we see is that even in the mainstream yoga world, we still see racism. We still see bias on the part of white yoga practitioners. We see institutional racism, you know, within the mainstream institutional system of yoga, of modern yoga industry. There is systematic discrimination and racism against me.
Dig that.
And against
and how's that manifest? They just don't acknowledge you? Is that it?
It's not acknowledged. For example, you got a magazine called Yoga Journal. Yoga Journal is the most popular yoga magazine on the planet Earth. They have millions of subscribers, right? I was instrumental in getting a sister to write an article for Yoga Journal that was featuring all of the top black yoga teachers. I included myself in the article, you know, and all the other people who were the top black yoga teachers. And when this article was published, I wasn't in the article. And Shola Ariwa, who wrote a book called Opening to Spirit and many other books, who was one of the top black yoga teachers who teaches yoga from an African perspective, she was edited out of the article. The other black people who did yoga from the Indian perspective and simply wanted to be a black person doing Indian yoga, they were included. Us who spoke of yoga from an African perspective and that there was a different narrative of yoga, we were excluded. Sometime after the article was written, a friend of mine who was in the article, he got on the airplane. He sat down and was next to the editor of Yoga Journal, because all of this is out in California, right? And he said, he asked the editor, he said, why did you all do you serve them the way that you did and edit them out the article? He said the guy just put his head down, right? So yoga has a narrative that yoga is simply yoga started 5,000 years ago in India.
It's a Vedic form.
It's a Vedic, yeah. And that anything that doesn't fit into that inside that narrative is not yoga. Only the word yoga, and I don't even believe that. Only the word yoga is Indian. But I believe even the word yoga comes from Africa. You know, but you know.
So what techniques, man? Just give. I know you can't give us a whole class, but just a meditation technique that could help some of the listeners focus in a little bit more on their being. What can just the average folk do to get closer?
You know, yoga and meditation is very simple. You know, you start with your breathing, right? Your respiratory system. Let's look at the word respiratory. R-E-S-P-I-R-A-T-O-R-Y, right? The root word of respiratory is spirit. So every time you take a breath, you are re-spiritizing, respiratory. You are re-spiritizing yourself.
Okay.
And so your spirit is a result of your breath. It's a result of breathing. That's why it says in the Bible and in other books, even this is the African concept, that the Creator took clay shaped into the shape of a person, and then he breathed the breath of life into it. So that's giving you the message right there, that it's all about the breath. You cannot see the breath. You cannot see, your
bracelet is hitting the table.
Okay,
and
I'm
it's
sorry.
echoing. I'm
Okay.
hearing that. I was wondering what that was.
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
bro.
But we exist in a medium, a fluid medium of air, of atmosphere. And in ancient Kemet, it was called Shu, S-H-U. And so this is the most important thing, because if we didn't have this air, we would die in 5 minutes. We can go for weeks without water. We can go for weeks, if not months, without food. But you can only go for 5 minutes without air. So I want to preface what I'm about to say with that. So your respiratory system is the only system of your body which is both voluntary and involuntary. If you don't think about it, you're going to automatically breathe. But you can also think about it, and you can breathe. You can make yourself breathe in. You can slow down your breathing. You can speed up your breathing. And so that gives you access to the other non-involuntary or automatic aspects of your physiology. So you can affect your blood pressure. You can affect your digestive system. You can affect your blood circulation. You can affect the different hormones within your body, and so on and so forth, right? And so slowing down your breathing, slowly breathing in through your nose, slowly breathing out through your nose. You can breathe in through your nose real slow. You can breathe out through your mouth very slowly. And if you just did this for 5 minutes a day, you would probably add a certain amount of time onto your life. If you practice something like this every day, your attitude would change, because you would not, things that normally make us angry, right, are really because we are not managing our stress and our anger, because we are overreacting to the stimuli that we experience from the outside world.
Same thing, Brother Bhagwan Ra Africa mentioned. Right. He's also a master meditator. He was saying very much the same thing. So
because he writes on anger management.
Yes, he does.
He's an anger management expert.
Yes, sir.
In addition to being a spiritual priest, So simply sitting with the back straight, with the feet flat on the floor, taking in a slow inhalation through the nose, paying attention to the breath, watching the air as it passes into your nostrils, and feel the coolness of the air as it comes, as it comes across the tissues in the nostrils, and feeling the belly expand.
And that's where you breathe into your belly rather than your lungs, right?
Well, you breathe into your lungs,
but
the
lower
breathe,
part.
You try to expand the abdomen because you want to fill the lungs up from the bottom to the top.
Gotcha.
So the abdomen expands first, the middle of the body expands second, and then the chest expands third. So you try to divide your breath into those 3 parts. And 3 is a very powerful number, right? A lot of things is divided into 3.
Yes, sir.
The
Trinity.
Yeah. And so we call this 3-part breathing. The other thing that we do is that we try to do what we call rule of 4 breathing. So each breath is divided into 4 parts. Inhalation is part 1. After you inhale and you fill the lungs up, you hold the breath, you stop breathing. So you pause for like 1 to 3 seconds. That's part 2. The exhalation, the slow exhalation of the breath is part 3. And then after you exhale, before you inhale again, you don't rush to inhale again. You pause, you wait, you observe inwardly. And that's the 4th part, that pause before you inhale again. And so what we're doing is that you are dealing with awareness. You are dealing with observation, because it's giving you the chance to pay attention So they call this, like now they got this thing called mindfulness, right?
Right.
And they act like mindfulness is something different than what people normally do when they practice yoga.
Indeed.
But mindfulness is, so this way of breathing, of paying attention to the breath is something that, I call it the yoga skills method, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it increases mindfulness, it increases awareness, it increases.
When people say mindfulness, that's a kind of amorphous phrase. What does it mean to you when they say that?
Well, there's an industry called mindfulness,
For
right?
real.
So a white guy out of Harvard named John Kabat-Zinn,
That's him.
he developed this mindfulness movement, and he calls it mindfulness, and they practice a form of Buddhist meditation as a part of this. And I've taught this. I've had to study it, and I had to take it into Cook County Jail as part of a research project to measure the effect of this type of meditation on men, locked up in Cook County Jail who had a substance abuse issue along with that, right?
That's fascinating, bro. What you find? Was it successful?
Yeah, it was successful, but this is what I had to do. I had to change up the protocol from what John Kabat-Zinn created, because we was working on a 6-week program, right? So after 6 weeks, it was over, and so each week you're introducing another aspect to this. But one of the things that you do is that you get people to reveal their trauma, their pain, their distress. But you have to give them something, you can't just wait till the next week to say, okay, I'll see you next week. You bring up all of this pain, all of this
and
trauma.
hang with it. Hold off, and we'll get back to you.
And you locked up in jail, and you can't even close your eyes. So I had to teach them how to meditate with their eyes open, because if you in a place where you got 30 to 60 other dudes, and you're gonna sit there and close your eyes with them. No, you can't do that, And so, so these guys they had to, make adaptations, but they had to learn how to meditate with their eyes open and stuff, And a lot of them, many of them were very successful, and these was brothers.
What changes did they make after that success?
Statistically, right? When we did the evaluation, we found that there was a decrease in recidivism. That was our measures: recidivism and relapse. So recidivism is, did they commit another crime and go back to jail? So we found that there, compared to the average that you can find statistically, there was a decrease in recidivism. There was also a decrease, because some of these men, after they was released, they were tracked because they was able to get social services at certain organizations, right? And so they was able to even find out that they have relapse, and if you had a relapse, there was a high probability that you was going to have you was going to do something else to go back to jail, right? And so in both of those indicators, there was reductions, right?
Okay.
And so it was a successful program. And plus, we measured it against another program. We had another program that was just involved. The intervention was a reading, like some type of a reading or writing project that they did.
Okay.
And
going the intellectual route.
Yeah.
The route of the intellect rather than the route of the spirit.
Yeah. And, that's good, too, because, you could see a reduction in some of these indicators from engaging in writing and creativity, but the meditation surpassed the results of the meditation.
And the meditation, the mindfulness meditation, is simply paying attention to your breath and other things in your environment that you normally ignore.
Well, part of the process is paying attention to your breath. Another part of the process is consciously dealing with the issues that emerge, the awareness of your life, the issues and behaviors that you've had that are going to be revealed to you through the practice of the breathing and of the paying attention of the body scan, the progressive relaxation, focusing on different parts of the body. As I said earlier, when I first did my meditation, I could feel my kidneys. I never felt that before. So people often have pain in different parts of their body that they block out. And then you wonder, what is the origin of this pain? Oftentimes, this pain or different aches and pains that they feeling in different parts of the body are associated with thoughts and emotions that they have not resolved. You know, so a breakup with their family, with their loved ones, you know, things like that. We also focus on specific techniques of how do I break myself of smoking cigarettes? How do I break myself of using drugs and drinking? What are my triggers? What are the things that trigger me? So practicing the meditation allows a person to become aware of the impulses that trigger them, the thoughts that trigger them, the external stimuli from the environment, the people, the places, the smells, you know, the visual sounds, all of these things that trigger a maladaptive, what I call a maladaptive behavior that's going to cause you to become go back to being addicted, or cause you to commit a crime, you know, and go back to jail. So from this awareness, then you have to consciously deal. You can't just say, well, I'm just gonna learn how to relax. You got to consciously deal with this issue. You have to confront it. And that's where the discomfort comes in at. And so you can't just say, we're going to deal with this discomfort next week. You got to deal with that discomfort now. So the way you deal with it is that you focus on it, and then you take that breath in, and then when you exhale, you try to release it. But you have to understand my motivation for doing the things that caused me to be locked up, that caused me to be addicted to drugs, you know, has an origin in the way that I'm perceiving my environment, in the way that I'm perceiving other people, and the way that I'm perceiving myself, you know.
And this is just not a healthy practice for people who are addicted or who are in prison. This is for everyone.
This is for everybody, right? You know, just think if you had a president like Donald Trump who had self-awareness. You know,
I was gonna say that's a perfect place to make this transition to contemporary issues. But you know, you said something else that's good. I mean, I wanted some tips on meditation. I think people need to have those tips, man, because that's an extremely useful practice, man. Any kind of meditation you can really do, if you master it, it will serve you in very, very useful ways.
Well, in my practice as a teacher, you know, I work with people who have cancer, all kind of different things, right? And so we have particular techniques of like, how do I cause my body to heal? How do I cause my tumor to shrink or disappear? How do I cause a fibroid to disappear from my body? How do I cause an ailment to disappear? And you use your breath. You understand that the inhalation of your breath, you can actually create energy with your mind, a healing energy that goes into that area. So once you know that you have an ailment in a particular place of your body, say you had say it was a woman, she had breast, or a male too, had breast cancer, right? So you know the tumor is here. So when you breathe in, you're consciously trying to pull, you visualize the breath, the life force that you're taking into your body. You can use a visualization, like this is an army coming to rescue something, or coming to defeat an enemy. And then on the exhalation, you're releasing that ailment from the body. And and so this could be done with an ailment, a tumor. It could be done with with something psychological,
a troubling thought,
yeah. Because if somebody had abused you and you were traumatized, you never dealt with it, or something happened to you in the past where you had, like I had one student, her mother had died when she was a baby, and this woman was 50 years old, and we're practicing yoga, and all of a sudden she starts saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," because she had we had did a technique that released this where she was storing this trauma from the loss of her mother, and she had never dealt with it. She had never got, because like we black, we don't get counseling and all that stuff. We just sublimate all of these things, And so with black people, we sublimate so much. We don't have time. We're on a survival mode, right?
For real.
And so we don't get counseling. And, even psychological services are considered to be a weakness among some people, And so we don't ever deal with these things. So we have all of this stuff built up in us, and we die sooner. We have more higher rates of disease and stuff. Even with this COVID, disease, virus is going around. 1 out of 5 people that die is black.
Is that? I thought it was higher than that.
Well, it might be higher than that. That's just some statistic I heard. But nobody really knows what it is because it's not even no testing, no programs even know what the hell is going on. Everything is chaos, right?
Yes, sir.
It's piecemeal.
the Greeks theory, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you something that stuck out to me was you talked about Ma'at being a female and how the Kemetan theology is or spiritual systems are not reluctant at all to acknowledge feminine divinity, and that's something that is also looked upon with some contempt in Western monotheism.
Yeah, well, when I lecture, I give a lot of examples of feminine energy and of the feminine foundation of African culture and African civilization. Even when you think it's male going on, it's really female. So, for example, you got Ma'at. Ma'at, in the creation story, they say, well, this was created first, then that was created second, so on and so forth. But Ma'at was always there. So the foundation of everything is this feminine energy. Yoga is a feminine, not a effeminate practice, but it's you working with feminine energy. Feminine energy is where everything comes from, right? Everything comes from the feminine. You come from your mama,
First sustenance.
Yeah, And so the whole idea of African civilization is feminine. When you see Asar, right? You familiar with Asar?
Yes, sir.
And Asar is the king, and he's sitting on his throne, and the soul of the deceased is coming to be judged, right? But who's behind him?
Aset.
Aset and Nebhet. And Aset got what on her head? She got the crown on her head. She got the throne on her head. Her crown is the throne that he's sitting on. And her hands are against his shoulders like this, saying, I'm bestowing upon you the authority to sit in this chair as the king. And let me say this.
Patriarchs don't want to hear that.
Yeah. let me say this. When white folks first went to Africa to try to colonize, when the British and all these cats first went to Africa, they would conquer and they would capture the king, right? They would tell the king, but tell the people to do this and do that. And the king, and whatever the king told the people, they wasn't paying no attention to the king because the British didn't know how the stuff worked, right? They didn't know how the system worked. Because you have the Council of Elders, but you also have the Secret Society of Women. And the women had the primary influence over the king, right? And so what do white folks do? They created something called anthropology, the study of culture. And anthropology, sociology was all created as means to study us in order to learn how to conquer us and how to control us. University of Chicago.
Your alma mater.
Yeah. Franklin, the black one, and Park, his white mentor. They tracked the black migration, right? And they wrote about the nature of the black family. So they did all of the great sociological studies was done on black people. The anthropological studies was done on Africans.
primitive Margaret Mead and them, right?
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, brother, and it's going so fast. You mentioned the feminine energy and kind of the aversion to feminine energy that we express in the West. One of the things that people say about Trump, which you also mentioned, is that he is the revenge of masculine energy. He is the revenge of those who feel that men have been dismissed in this culture and are being usurped by the feminazis, so to speak. I mean, that's how some of the right-wing folks say. But it's also an expression that you hear, not so much feminazi, but the fear of the diminishment of men in this culture is pretty rife, and it's one of the things that's driving support for Trump. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the white male support for Trump amongst the most lowest elements among white people is exactly what you're saying. That and it's more than that too. They feel as if they are under threat.
They will become minorities by mid-century.
Yeah, I mean, look. When you look at the cosmology again, what God created Adam, that he took the rib out of Adam and he made a woman, and he made the woman to be subservient to Adam. That's what they're operating from. Who support Trump? The Christian fundamentalists who believe that the dude who's the vice president, Pence, he can't even be in another room with a woman who's not his wife and all kind of crazy stuff. They have an aversion, they have a hatred of women. When they burn witches at the stake, the witches was women. They ain't burn no dudes at the stake. Right. Because the women is carrying this energy that makes them afraid. And so they've created a whole mythology around women that now is operating at the subconscious level to cause and even creating the politics of the day, And so
you think there's something to this that Trump is expressing this frustrated masculinity?
Yeah, he's an expression of something that was already there, and or
frustrated patriarchy. Let's say.
Yeah, and he is manipulating that and taking advantage of this feeling of inferiority and inadequacy of these white dudes, right? Because you got this whole movement of white dudes, right, who can't get no sex.
They have an actual organization. It's an acronym. I forgot exactly what it was, but it was like sexless brothers.
Yeah. I forget the name of it, because it's like I pay attention to all this stuff.
One cat killed some people in Colorado. This one dude killed a lot of women, and he was a prominent member of this group.
Right.
They found a lot of posts on his computer,
right,
paying homage to this group.
Right, and it's like these cats, they don't have no game, so to speak, and so they can't get no sex, and so now they frustrated. But this is going on. See, this is not just in America. It's going on in Indian culture. It's going on in Arab cultures. This frustration over this sexual what you call it, where you just anxiety, where you're restricted and you're constricted without the ability to express this energy, right?
Frustration.
Yeah, and India. People talk about India is so spiritual. India is the rape capital of the world.
That's right, absolutely. And there's a lot of sectarian problems there now between Hindus and Muslims because Modi is trying to make a new Hindustan out of India.
Right.
And pretty much the same kind of nationalism, the kind of populist nationalism that Trump represents.
That's
and
right.
Bolsonaro in Brazil represents.
That's right. Bolsonaro, Modi, Putin.
Viktor Orban in Hungary.
There you go.
There's a bunch of those cats that's out here. Even Netanyahu in Israel, he's one of them.
There you go. There you go.
These ethno states. They want these nationalist ethno states.
Right.
And that's why it's really hard for me to understand for a brother who's really seriously researching things to have affection for someone like Trump. after knowing what he represents, the forces that he represents in the world.
You know, it's I stated the other day that it's gut-wrenching to read the stuff that these brothers are saying in support of Trump, you know. And even when they hear the information that, see, QAnon has done a job on these brothers' brains, right?
You think that's at root here?
Yeah. They have watched these videos where they've been convinced that Obama, Clinton, Biden, and all the whole Oprah Winfrey, all this kind of crazy stuff, that they all part of some sex ring where they killing babies.
I don't think a lot of brothers are into that.
Yeah, that's been my.
Is that right? Yeah.
I encounter because if I say something, if I post something against Trump. I don't say nothing about Biden because I don't care nothing about Biden. I just want to get rid of Trump. But if I say something against Trump, another brother would say, "But Biden is a pedophile."
Okay.
You know, and so I was like, "Where are they getting this from?" And so they got I forget the one of this. It's a very well made video because it made me like, wow, you know, and it talks about how the Hollywood elite and the Democratic elite, that they all, they're all pedophiles and they eating and babies and drinking blood. These cats believe this stuff, right? They actually
it must be very persuasive, man, to sell that story. Man, that sounds so way out.
Look. A few years ago, I started getting into brothers who were trying to tell me that the earth was flat.
I'm familiar with those cats.
You know.
You hit the Sonetta?
Yeah.
I think you were on Sonetta one time.
Yeah, I know Sonetta. I be walking down 125th Street in Harlem. I see Sonetta. You know, I've been on this show before.
I know. I think I have seen you on Sonetta. Yeah. Well, you see a lot of these cats on Sonetta TV.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. But you know, it's certain cats. You know, I can name them. I don't want to go off onto them. You know, but it's certain cats who are pushing that thing, right? And so, I believe that this was part of a plan, or at least it turned out to be part of a plan, whether it was intentional or not, to lower the mentality of people in general, and particularly the black people, especially black men, where they can accept. It was like if you do an experiment, you say, let's see how many people we can get to accept that the earth is flat. Cats been on airplanes. They looked out the window. They, you got cats who call themselves astrologers and everything, and they turn around. You got the earth back behind you, right in the picture. They turn around and they say the earth is flat because a dude said it in a video. So the videos have served the function of replacing reality, and people absorb this stuff because they feel like they are empowered with information that nobody else has, right? And that the masses of people are just sheeple, but they're not sheeple because they believe in the reality that everything is controlled and manipulated, right? But they don't have any discernment, any nuance, or understanding of how things are really made and shaped. So they just believe anything. So I acknowledge that much is a lie, much is manipulative, that the foundation of this whole civilization, this whole culture is propaganda, but not to the degree where the earth is flat, not to the degree that everybody is drinking blood and killing babies, not to the degree that Donald Trump is a superhero. That one of the myths is that Donald Trump has a secret war against these pedophiles, right?
That's a QAnon.
That's myth. A QAnon thing, right? And they say that, and this is what black people believe. This is what I got.
But I never thought that black people were so susceptible to the QAnon argument.
Trump's,
because it is kind of a right wing closet white supremacist argument hidden under that.
Well, the poor boys, whatever their name is,
Proud Boys,
and
the Boogaloo Boys.
Boogaloo, they got some black members, and
not surprised.
The plan was to get see, this is the thing. When Trump won, he didn't win because he got a mass of people to believe in him. He picked off 10, 20%, and that's what they doing. So everybody don't believe this crazy stuff. Most brothers don't believe this, but you got this 10 to 20% who do, and they believe it vehemently, you know. And so that's what they want to do. They only need to pull off a small a particular chunk, you know, and that's what they doing, you know, because
because they're exploiting the gender tensions in our community, much like I was saying, that whole problem with femininity and whatnot. We have it because of our history, because the way the accrued disadvantages that we've suffered. We have that crippled relationship, gender relationship that we've always had. And sometimes we've managed it better than others, but right now it's a pretty serious tension point, and it's being exploited very heavily by the Trumpians.
But it's deeper than that too, right? Take a bunch of girls and put them in the playground and say, go play. They'll form a circle. They'll play where everybody get a chance and everybody get a turn, and they'll cooperate and they'll play an organized game. Take a bunch of boys, put them on the playground. They're gonna start, because that's how we used to do. Everybody start kicking, kung fu each other, kicking each other, tackling, you know, fighting and everything, you know. So there's a certain consciousness that males have that is different than females, especially in the Western context, right? And so we got left-brained males and we got right-brained females. So we operate on a different frequency and a different level of consciousness, right? And so the left brain is unable to see the world holistically and see the interconnectedness of things, to see nuance and to see discernment.
Brother, yes, here. Unfortunately, brother, we gotta cut it off here, which means we have to bring you back, brother, because cutting it off between left brain and right brain, that's the wrong place. that concept is something we need to be much more aware of. And I appreciate you being here, my brother. I hope the listeners appreciated it, and I hope that they, click some stars in appreciation. So everyone, we'll see you again Friday. Say goodbye to my esteemed guest, and I'll say goodbye to you. Peace.
Thanks a lot, brother.